Well, this isn't late at all. Hello everyone, welcome to my channel. As you can tell by the title, this is my video for my favourite film from every genre. I was very kindly nominated by Game Over Movie Reviews, Luke Herefield and Tay Reviews. Please go and check out their channels, they produce some amazing content. I will include the links to their channels in the description, but please go over, subscribe, watch some of their videos, they're fantastic. And at the end of this video, I will be revealing my 3 nominations for people who I would like to see take on this challenge too. But the way this one works is that I have taken 13 movie genres, and I will just be running down my favourite films from said genre. In this video, we've got the likes of sci-fi, musical, drama, animation, action, romance, adventure, comedy, horror, comic book, thriller, western, and fantasy. So let's cut the dilly-dallying and let's get on with my first pick, and that is sci-fi. Now, one of my pet peeves when people ask me, oh Luke, what is your favourite movie? I'm not a fan of that question because I never have one solidified answer, but if I'd rather just avoid any awkwardness and answer the question, I will go with Interstellar, a film by Christopher Nolan that when I saw it in cinemas for the first time blew my frickin' mind. For me, it's the epitome of what a cinematic experience can be like. Every single time I've seen the movie since, I'm getting something new out of it. I am totally wrapped up in, I think, the 2 hours and 50 minutes. The story just sweeps me off my feet. The arc of Matthew McConaughey's character leaving planet Earth and traveling across dimensions to find a new haven for Earth, but having to leave his family behind. It's heartbreaking, that scene where he's watching Murph and his son grow in the space of a few video messages, because what I also love about the film is that they base it on real theoretical physics. I guess you can still refer to it as science fiction, but a lot of the visual effects that you see are somewhat grounded in reality, and it is astonishing. It also has one of Hans Zimmer's best scores, so yes, Interstellar, favourite science fiction movie, but also in a roundabout way, it's one of my favourite movies ever. Next up, for musicals, we could have gone for Grease. We could have gone for pretty much any Disney musical. But instead, I've picked a film that came out a few years ago, and it won the Best Picture for the space of a few minutes before Moonlight deservedly got it, and that is Damien Chazelle's La La Land. This movie is incredible. It is a beautiful homage to musicals, Hollywood in general. You've got the character of Mia, played by Emma Stone, giving an Academy Award-winning performance. Her journey to fulfill her dreams. That's what another thing I love about this film is that it speaks to the dreamer within us all, and Damien Chazelle's direction is practically faultless. The end sequence of, spoiler alert if you haven't seen La La Land by the way, but go and watch La La Land. The end sequence as they show you an alternate timeline of what had happened if Emma Stone and Ryan Gosling's characters did end up together is beautiful. It's a love letter to classic Hollywood movies, a love letter to the music of jazz from Ryan Gosling's character. The dance sequences are beautiful. I love watching this film so dearly, and I haven't seen it in a while, so I think I need to rectify this now. Now for drama, and when I had initially planned these films out a couple weeks ago, it was going to be A Social Network, directed by David Fincher, with probably one of the greatest screenplays of all time, written by Aaron Sorkin. But about a week or so ago, I sat and watched The Godfather for the first time. And, I mean, the problem with a film like The Godfather, if you've never seen it before, is that you have heard these incredible things about it, people saying that it's one of the greatest films of all time, and you go in with a certain level of expectations, and normally, when you go in with those stratospheric expectations, the likelihood is that the movie isn't going to meet it. Except for The Godfather, it didn't just meet it, it exceeded every single expectation I had. I'm not the biggest fan of crime and gangster movies, but this completely captivated me from start to finish. The character of Michael Corleone is fascinating. He easily is one of the most interesting characters in cinema, probably ever. The performance Al Pacino gives is so deeply layered and complex that when you talk about performances in this film, everyone immediately goes for Marlon Brando, and that is completely understandable. But I think Al Pacino is so criminally overlooked in this film. It is a sensational performance. Francis Ford Coppola's direction is magnetic. There is never a moment where I wasn't invested in what was happening on screen. The overriding themes of family, it's something different than what we've normally seen in crime films. They're always focused on the crime aspects. This is more about a family and how a man who started out so innocent can become a ruthless criminal mastermind. Now for animation, this one was a bit tricky because, in my personal opinion, I don't know if I view animation as a genre as such. It often feels more like a method of filmmaking, of storytelling, but for the purpose of this video, for animation, I have chosen the greatest Fantastic Four movie of all time, and that is The Incredibles. One of my childhood favourite films. When I was younger, I would have I think it was the DVD, and I would put the DVD in, watch the film from start to finish, and then if I had nothing to do for the rest of the day, I would just rewind the film back to the beginning and watch it all over again. It is so funny, action-packed. This is a really, really exciting and probably one of Disney's most thrilling animated movies. The sequence where Dash runs on water will never ever fail to not give me goosebumps when I watch it. The score by Michael Giacchino is fantastic. The animation is so fun and vibrant. It's a great throwback to classic 50s serials. You can tell Brad Bird has such a passion about that genre, and the way he's able to implement that in to appeal to families and kids. I will never ever get tired of watching this film. Now for action, I've kind of cheated a bit because I've chosen two movies that I feel like if you see the first, you automatically have to then go on and see the second. And those films are a pair of Indonesian films called The Raid and The Raid 2. My word, if you are an action movie fan and you have not yet seen these two films directed by Gareth Evans, I promise you are doing yourself a disservice. The fight choreography in these films is freaking mind-blowing. The first movie is a bit like Die Hard in some respects. You've got a group of SWAT officers who are having to infiltrate a high-rise building and basically work their way floor to floor to reach the criminal boss at the top, and it is just non-stop action, and it never gets boring. I was kind of worried that it would after a while, but they find ways to keep it fresh, to keep it inventive, and it's brutal too. As for The Raid 2, the story becomes far more complex, drawn out, almost like a Godfather type plot as you involve different crime families from Indonesia, from other Asian countries. The choreography is still on point, but the characters and the story is so much more fleshed out that you find yourself far more involved than you ever thought you might be. Seriously, I tell you what, if you are not convinced, I want you to use this time now. Go on Google, just type in the raid fight scene, find the first one you see, sit and watch it, and if that doesn't convince you, then you can no longer call yourself an action movie fan. I'm serious. Now, romance is not a genre that I'm, per se, the biggest fan of. However, when a movie gets it right, it can get it spot on. And that is exactly what Life is Beautiful did. A film written, directed, and starring Roberto Benigni, who gives one of the most charismatic performances I think cinema has ever seen. It tells the story of a man, played by Benigni, who comes from a lower class working background, and he falls in love with a woman who is living this aristocratic lifestyle, and the two share such an endearing bond that they move away together. And that is where the second half of the film comes in, where you find out that they've moved to Poland in the middle of World War II, and they're both Jewish. So that means that they ended up, his son gets separated from his wife, and they end up in a concentration camp. And this is where I think the idea of romance gets played around with a little bit, and I like that. So the first half is a romance between him and his wife. The second half is that same love, but transferred between him and his son. He has to keep this illusion that his son doesn't quite know the circumstances of what a concentration camp is, so he treats it almost like a game for his son, that the end prize is to win a tank so as to not fill his son with complete dread. It will make your heart sore in places, and it will break your heart in others. I think it is a beautiful film, and if you haven't seen it yet, please just find a way to do so. Now, I've taken the genre of adventure quite loosely, and have gone with a film that is probably the most perfect movie of all time, and that is Back to the Future. I would say that this movie counts as an adventure. You're being taken on an adventure from 1980s America to the 1950s, traveling through time with Marty McFly in his DeLorean. You've got the eccentricity of Doc Emmett Brown. The direction by Robert Zemeckis just is unparalleled. This is a movie that will forever remain timeless. If they even tried to attempt to remake it, I think Hollywood would implode upon itself. I don't think I need to say anything more about Back to the Future that hasn't already been said millions and millions of times. It's a perfect film, and a film that if I put on, no matter even if it's halfway through, I will stop whatever I'm doing and finish watching it. So when it comes to comedy, I would say comedy is probably the most subjective genre out there. I know some might say horror, but for me, it's really comedy. It's very tricky at points to find a film that will get me right in the good spot. There are a lot of comedies that just completely missed the mark, but one that didn't miss the mark and fired on all cylinders was Edgar Wright's Hot Fuzz. I'm a huge fan of the Cornetto trilogy. I love Shaun of the Dead. Hot Fuzz, I think, is his best work. And World's End is still a very, very good film, but when you compare it to Edgar Wright's pantheon of films that he's made, The World's End usually comes towards the end. But what I love about Hot Fuzz, you've got the pairing of Simon Pegg and Nick Frost. They play off each other so well. You've got great supporting turns from the likes of Timothy Dalton, Jim Broadbent, Olivia Colman even shows up. It's so darkly comic. Like, I don't think I would have ever laughed seeing someone plunge garden shears into a woman's throat before, but somehow Edgar Wright finds a way. It's a throwback to buddy cop movies, the likes of Lethal Weapon and Bad Boys, and it references that as well. Edgar Wright's script is witty, it's sharp, it's funny, the editing is also on point. I feel like my generation in particular, you'd be very hard pushed to find someone who says, "Oh, have you seen Hot Fuzz? What did you think of it?" And they don't turn around and say, "Oh, mate, it's brilliant." Also, I now say yarp and narp on way too regular a basis. Now, as I mentioned with comedy, it's very subjective, and the same does go for the horror genre too. I don't mean to blow my own trumpet here, but I've seen a lot of horror films, and unfortunately the fact that so many horror films use similar tactics, it's very tricky to scare me, unless your movie features a clown, in which case I don't like that. But there was one film a couple of years ago. I was the only person in that screen. And by the time the credits rolled, the lights came up, I was shivering. Not because it was cold, because the movie frightened me that much. And that movie is Robert Eggers' The Witch. This film is so atmospheric and dark. It is not going to be a film for everyone. I am a strong believer. I think if you were to show this movie to 100 people, a big proportion of them will just not like it. It's shot in a 4:3 aspect ratio. The dialogue is a very traditional English, kind of ye olde English, so to speak. And there aren't any subtitles as well, so you kind of have to trust in the direction of Robert Eggers that he's still trying to get across the message. You've got a brilliant performance by Anya Taylor-Joy, and what I believe was such a sorely overlooked performance by Ralph Ineson, who is terrifying in this movie. His voice My word, that man can boom horrifying things out. But we come back to that sense of atmosphere. It's so bleak and dirty and horrible. You've got this total sense of dread throughout the film as this family are basically ousted from their village. Their daughter goes missing, and they basically think that they're being cursed by a witch or by the devil. You get this whole conflict of, is it paranoia or are there supernatural forces at play here? And it's great throughout the film, but the ending is what made it for me. This ending freaked me out. It really got under my skin, and that is what left me reeling when I saw it. Like I said, not for everyone, but the witch, yeah, scared me. As for comic book movies, well, there's plenty to choose from. There's plenty that I could have picked. I could have gone for The Dark Knight, because it's The Dark Knight. Could have gone for Guardians of the Galaxy. I love that film too, but I have to go with probably one of the more cliched answers, but it was the most amazing cinematic experience I think I've ever had, and that was the culmination of, I think, 23 films within the Marvel Cinematic Universe, and that, of course, is Avengers Endgame. Again, kind of similar to Back to the Future, I'm not going to take up too much time because it's Avengers Endgame. Witnessing this as a comic book fan who never thought that we would see the likes of Thanos and the Infinity Saga on the big screen ever. The way that the Russo brothers and the mastermind that is Kevin Feige managed to pull this off is outstanding. I will never, ever, for the rest of my life, forget the moment where you hear Sam, or the new now, Captain America, over the comms go, on your left, and the portals arrive, and everyone just lose their minds. It is the perfect culmination. 3 hours of pure fun and entertainment. It's fantastic. It's Avengers Endgame. Next up is the thriller genre, another genre that you can kind of take a bit loosely, and so I've decided that I was going to go for Sam Mendes' 1917, a cinematic accomplishment, the likes of which I don't think we'll ever likely see again. From the moment our two lead characters climb up those ladders and step foot out into no man's land, the movie never lets up. That's partly to do with Sam Mendes' direction and the cinematography by Roger Deakins because, and this is widely known now, it's shot and edited to feel like one continuous shot, to make it the most immersive experience you could possibly imagine, to draw you in, to make it feel like you are a third soldier joining them on their mission. And it is astonishing the way in which they were able to pull this off. George Mackay and Dean Charles Chapman give great performances. The score by Thomas Newman is absolutely beautiful. The final moment where George Mackay's character is absolutely gunning it down the trenches, or just over the trenches, as these explosions and all the soldiers are running out. It is what the likes of cinema is made for. And it was refreshing to see a war film that wasn't focused on fighting. In fact, it was more focused on stopping fighting from happening in the first place. 1917 is absolutely one of the most thrilling films I've ever seen, and if it has somehow eluded you up until this point, fix it. I promise you, you will be blown away by it. Our penultimate genre is the Western, with some of the Western films just not being my cup of tea. However, one director managed to really turn the tables for me, and that was Quentin Tarantino with Django Unchained. This is just Tarantino playing with the Western genre, and it is fantastic to sit and watch. Jamie Foxx gives a great lead performance as Django Freeman. Christoph Waltz is incredible as Dr. King Schultz in this film. Samuel L. Jackson is sorely underlooked in this film, but no one was more overlooked in this film than Leonardo DiCaprio as Calvin Candy. Many people say that instead of winning the Oscar for The Revenant, he should have won it for The Wolf of Wall Street. I can see the logic behind that, but I take it a step further and say that he should have won the Oscar for his performance as Calvin Candy in this film. He wasn't even nominated. It's one of the best performances, not that just he's ever given, one of the best performances, in my personal opinion, that I have ever seen. He is terrifying. as Calvin. That entire dinner scene where he smashes his hand on the skull and terrorizes Broomhilda and Django and King. Oh my word, it is an acting masterclass from DiCaprio, and the fact that he did not even get a nomination is criminal. Of course, as we get to the end of the film, it's trademark Tarantino, violence galore. It's so deliriously entertaining to watch, and those 2 hour 40 minutes absolutely fly by. And finally, well, some of you may be thinking when I spoke about science fiction, well, Luke, we know that you're a massive Star Wars fan. Why didn't you include Star Wars in your science fiction genre? And that's a very good question, and the answer is very simple. It's because Star Wars is a fantasy genre. There are elements of science fiction, don't get me wrong, but at its core, it's a fantasy. The clues right at the beginning of every film, a long time ago, in a galaxy far, far away. And there are plenty of fantasy films that I could have picked. The Lord of the Rings trilogy, the Harry Potter franchise, absolutely. But no franchise means more to me than Star Wars. I could talk for years about the Star Wars franchise. I would love to talk for years about it too. But Star Wars for me, there will always come a time if I'm watching a Star Wars film, and call me a blind fanboy if it makes me a blind fanboy, but when I watch these films, whether it be for the first time or the 100th time, when I see the Lucasfilm logo and the John Williams theme strikes up and you've got the crawl that takes up the screen, everything fades away. I am locked in, and nothing will ever take me out. Yeah, absolutely, there are some lower points in the Skywalker saga, but that doesn't necessarily negate it as something, oh well, we've had a couple blips, I can never enjoy this again now. No. Star Wars will always be my favourite franchise. I get so excited to see new stories develop within the universe. I'm so excited for what is to come, but that will never detract from my excitement about watching the previous installments too. Star Wars will always be just a huge part of my life. So there we are. Those were my picks for all of these different genres and all of these different films. It's been a blast kind of looking over a lot of these films. Most of these films are some of my favorites, so any chance I can get to talk about them, I will take that opportunity. Now it's time for my nominations. I want to make it clear, if I nominate you, you are absolutely under no obligation to do this video. If you'd rather not, that's absolutely fine. I won't take any offense to it. I will, however, just constantly stand outside your house until you do. But my first nomination, I don't know if he's been nominated yet. He probably has. But I don't know if he's done it yet, and that is Jared Talk Cinema. Amazing YouTuber I've collaborated with in the past. We did a trivia video together that you can check out on my channel. It's an amazing video. I'm very proud of it. His channel's fantastic. Go and check it out. He has a very dry sense of humor that I love, but he goes into a lot of depth and really, really dissects a movie down. He's great to listen to, and I love whenever he uploads a new video. My next nomination is for Rutter Reviews. I don't know if this is something that he'd likely do on his channel. He's somewhat particular about what he chooses to upload. He's not like a type of reviewer where he'll just, oh, there's a new movie released, I will review it. He will do ones that he's interested in. So whether or not he chooses to do this, I don't know. I'm very interested to see what he picks though, because believe you me, he will absolutely find a way to get an Aardman animation in every single genre. So I'm really interested to see how he does that. And my final nomination, bit of a Hail Mary here, because at the moment I don't think his channel is particularly active, although I have heard it from the horse's mouth himself that he is looking to make a comeback. He's a really dear friend of mine, Alexander Polak. I hope I'm pronouncing your surname right, mate. He's due to make a comeback to YouTube in the not too distant future, hopefully. So perhaps, if he's willing, he'd like to do this video too. I already know what he'd likely pick for some of the genres. Definitely expect some Kick-Ass or Kingsman to pop up in there. But yeah, I think he'd have a great array of picks to choose from, so I'd be definitely interested to see what he has in store too. But there we are, that is the video. Thank you ever so much for watching, and as always, I will see you in the next video. Hello, thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you have, make sure to click that like button, and if you aren't already, click that subscribe button too.